Okay, we're continuing with the hidden history of nutrition, health, and science by me, Pete Rogers. We're talking today about diabetes. So basically what they tell you in school is there's nothing in med school, for example, residency, there's nothing you can do about type 2 diabetes. Nobody knows what causes it. You just take our pills initially, then you take our medications and you try to slow it down a little. It's the best you could do. We'll manage the complications as they come along. But in reality, they've known since 1927. J. Shirley Sweeney took a bunch of medical students. He fed one of them high-fat diet, another one high-carbohydrate diet. All the high-fat diet ones failed their oral glucose tolerance test, okay? It was pretty obvious. And there were a whole bunch of other earlier researchers that confirmed that, including Rabinowitz and Himsworth. And then I'll show you just this one book right here. This is called Life Without Diabetes by Roy Taylor, and he's a diabetes researcher. He worked with Gerald Shulman. They were using nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy, and they could see, looking in a skeletal muscle, the first detectable finding of diabetes is the accumulation of fat inside the muscle cell. They called it intramyocellular lipid. You know, muscle cellular cell lipid is fat, so that's intramyocellular lipid. Anyways, that's the first detectable finding. That's important to know. It's fat that causes diabetes. And why does fat do it? Because fat has something called the flip-flop maneuver, whereby it can just cross the plasma membrane of a skeletal muscle cell by intercalating itself in it. It'll become protonated, nonpolar, add itself to the outer leaflet, flip-flop into the inner leaflet of the plasma membrane, enter the cell, go into the mitochondria. Okay, so the cell cannot control it. The amount of fat that comes into your skeletal muscle cells is proportional to the amount of fat you eat. There's no other way around that. And it's especially saturated fat, but the other fats will also lead to insulin resistance and increased risk of diabetes. Okay, they're diabetogenic. And, you know, normally after you eat a meal, postprandial means post is after, prandial to eat. So after eating, the glucose should especially go to your skeletal muscle so you can store it as glycogen. Okay, and the glycogen stored in skeletal muscle is just for that muscle. Additional glucose is stored in the liver as liver glycogen, and that's for the whole body, but especially for the brain. The main thing the liver does is store glucose as glycogen for the brain. I mean, it does a lot more, but that's the most important thing it does. Okay, because the brain wants to burn glucose. So this is the book, and what Roy Taylor did, he just took a whole bunch of diabetics, type 2 diabetics who had diabetes 4 years or less. He put them on a diet. All the ones that lost 30 pounds, they all cured themselves of type 2 diabetes. Cured. It's easy to cure type 2 diabetes. By definition, it's easy to cure. The first fat to come off their body was the fat in the liver. It's very metabolic. The liver is the metabolic workhorse of the body. Okay, so these patients, they could be cured while they're still type 2 diabetes as long as they got intact pancreatic function. Okay, as soon as they lose 30 pounds of weight, they get stabilization of their, fasting blood glucose, for example. Okay, and there's a lot of people on the internet that got good videos on diabetes. I think these guys are both very good. These are the Mastering Diabetes guys, Bobby Bitterow and Cyrus Kumbata. His actual name is Robbie Barbaro. But anyways, they're good. I think they're a little lenient on fat because they're both young and athletic. They'll say you can eat up to even 15% of calories from fat. I'd recommend you stay below 10% or more. Dr. McDougall's diet, the McDougall diet's about 7% of calories from fat. Dr. Esselstyn keeps his diet at a maximum of 10, so less than 10%. If you eat my version of the Spartan Vegan, you'll probably end up somewhere around 5% of calories from fat. People who do that, they don't get type 2 diabetes. There's virtually zero type 2 diabetes in populations that were eating like the old Asian populations, eating 90% of their calories from white rice and then some vegetables, especially, and a little bit of fruit, a little bit of other stuff. But basically, minimize dietary fat, and you got a very good chance to reverse type 2 diabetes. Here, I'm going to show you a couple other things about it. Dr. McDougall's got really good online lectures about diabetes. Oh, and the greatest paper ever written about diabetes is the Michael Brownlee paper. And I would tell you, if you're only going to read one paper about metabolism, this is the one to read. It's like the Sistine Chapel of metabolism in papers. It's called The Pathobiology of Diabetic Complications, a Unifying Mechanism. Michael Brownlee won the award 2004, the Banting Award, as the best diabetes researcher in the world. He had type 1 diabetes as a child. He was told he was going to die in his 30s. He didn't want to die in his 30s. The guy's a total genius. He devoted his life to studying diabetes, and he's the greatest diabetes researcher who ever lived. When I read this paper, I wanted to start crying. It was so beautiful. He figured out that overwhelming the intermitochondrial membrane with electron carriers, primarily from saturated fat, was the main cause of diabetes. Okay? And you could also overwhelm like cells that constitutively take up glucose that are secondary complications in diabetic patients, but it's dietary fat that is the initiator of the disease. And every refutation argument you could try to throw at him, he tested it and proved it was wrong. He goes, some people might say this, but we did this, this, and this, and proved that is wrong. Some people might say this, but we did this, this, and this, and proved that was wrong. It was sort of his legacy lecture after a long career of working through all the nuts and bolts and questions about diabetes, the micro questions and the macro questions. And it's a tour de force. It's magnificent. It's so beautiful. Like I said, it's the Sistine Chapel of diabetes research papers. Okay. Other things on diabetes. I wrote a book on diabetes. This is my book on diabetes, Prevent and Reverse Diabetes, and I go through basically everything you need to know about it. But, I have a whole playlist of videos that you can watch for free. Sometimes it's nice to have a book. You can read a book in the bathroom. You could bring it with you in your backpack or whatever. And you've got it in print. You can write inside the book. But anyways, that's the scoop on diabetes. Okay. Okay, well, that'll be it for today. I hope you found that helpful.